because I'm Jody McDonald, and he's John McMullen, and he tells me his Comcast is hanging in there all show long. Are you lying? Are you guessing? Are you like
well, I'm
Eagles
guessing.
medical staff?
I have no power over Xfinity. They
Come
tell
on,
me,
wave that magic hand of yours. You can make it stick around.
They tell me it's running at 118% of optimization. That's what they tell me.
That's a pretty good number, 118%.
Well, it doesn't exist, Xfinity. You're making that up.
118? Is that really the number they gave you?
Yes, 118%. You run a test, and it says it's running 118% of what you should be getting. And I felt like saying, that's not a real number, as I just said, but let's let him have this.
And I think you need Nick Sirianni to consult on this, because if you're improving 1% per day, they've been working hard over there. At,
118% on one day. Well, that's pretty good. That's
pretty damn impressive. Well, after we lost you yesterday, Jeff Card, thank you very much for hanging in there and being my co-host after Johnny went down with Comcast issues, but not an issue today at 118%. Eagles had a bit of a busy day, juggling a little bit with their roster, so I got to get your take on everything that went down yesterday. We knew IR moves were coming. They kept Tyree Jackson on the 53-man roster. They didn't want to expose him. We knew he was going to go to IR. The question now is, how long is he going to be on IR? And if they eventually elevate him to the regular 53-man roster, what is his role going to be when he gets there? But knew Tyree Jackson was coming. Didn't know about Jack Driscoll. Had there been any hints of that? Did he get hurt in the last preseason game? When did Jack Driscoll's injury get to the level of, we better put this guy on IR?
No, we didn't know about it, and it's called a pec strain. The Eagles called it. So it could have happened in game, could have happened in practice. That's the kind of injury that happens to an offensive lineman. However, if you want to go to the conspiracy theory, and I wrote about this guy on Sports Illustrated yesterday, Brett Toth is just better than Jack Driscoll. I don't think a lot of Eagles fans realize that. Now, they don't want to lose Jack Driscoll, but I've been saying for a while, they got to carry Brett Toth on this team. They did. They're not only carrying him, he's going to be probably, if you think about Andre Dillard, I mean, he's only a left tackle. So we talk about the Lane Johnson, the ankle issues, and always being a play away. Well, that's Brett Toth, man. And by the way, he's better. He's a better player than Jack Driscoll. Right now, the Eagles know that. I'm not saying it's not a real injury, but they want to keep both players. They want to juggle the roster. You know how this works. He probably tweaked his pec, and they probably went a little bit overboard and say, all right, let's stick him on injured reserve for now and see what happens.
Let me ask you about the comparison between Driscoll and Toth. You saw certainly more than we did being there at practice every single day. Is flexibility the same with these two guys? Because, yes, if the Eagles are going to carry a guy like Andre Dillard, who is purely a left tackle and a guy they don't have confidence in the ability to move around and play different spots on the line, how would you compare the flexibility between both Toth and Driscoll? Not the overall talent and what they're able to do at the top of their game, but just plug them in at any one of the four spots other than left tackle. Is Toth as versatile as Driscoll as well?
Well, they're both they both played inside and outside. They're both more comfortable outside. They both are right tackles, essentially. That's their most comfortable position. It's where Brett played at Army. Jack Driscoll played, obviously, at Auburn. I think he started at UMass. The Eagles moved Jack Driscoll first as they do this cross-training inside the right guard. So he played it. He's willing to play it. He didn't play as well inside at right guard. They did a similar thing with Toth when Andre Dillard went down. He was getting all the second-team reps at left tackle and playing very well. When Andre came back, they moved him inside the left guard. So they both have similar versatility. I would say Toth can play left tackle, left guard, right tackle. I've seen him play those positions. Hasn't played right guard yet, but if you can play left tackle and left guard, you can play right guard. Driscoll's only been on the right side, so if anything, Toth has a little bit more versatility as well.
And I was wondering about keeping 10 offensive linemen. We now know it's down to 9 because of the move that they made, at least for what we're projecting to be the 45 when they get it up and running on opening day. Another addition yesterday, they added another DB because part of the off to the injured list was Josiah Scott. Again, was he hurt late
Yeah,
in training
he
camp?
was hurt. He hurt his hamstring. That's one of those things with defensive backs, and that's why you need so many defensive backs. I mean, Doug Peterson used to call it a thoroughbred position, and those guys need to be able to run, and they got to be at optimal levels, and they are most susceptible for those hamstring strains, and you see it all the time, not just here, but all around the NFL. So he has a hamstring strain. Um, Probably going to be about a 3-week injury. So it's interesting, and they picked up Andre. Let's do this right, Jody. Chachere,
Chachere.
Chachere, off waivers from Indianapolis. Somebody Jonathan Gannon is familiar with. I'm told he's got some versatility. He can play outside corner, can play a little bit of safety as well, even some nickel corners. So they like versatility. He's a little bit bigger. I think that helps. If they're looking at him as a cornerback, and that's what he's listed as, but it was interesting. I was talking to a writer in Indianapolis yesterday. He said he was playing a lot of safety in camp, and the Eagles listed him as a defensive back. So it remains to be seen where they put him. But if they put him at corner, he's got a little bit more size than Josiah Scott or Zach McPherson, for that matter. So that could bode well to be a backup on the outside. Or we talked a lot, Rodney McLeod. Look, he's not on the injured reserve, so that tells you the Eagles expect him in week 1, week 2, or week 3, because if they didn't, they would have put him on injured reserve. So their thought process is he's going to be back for one of those first 3 games. But, when in those first 3 games? Kayvon Wallace is back at practice, so that's helpful. We know Anthony Harris is going to start, and they have Marcus Epps, so they're a little bit shaky there as well from a depth perspective. Now, we brought up a lot over the past couple of days. You can also elevate guys from the practice squad. So Elijah Riley could be in the mix to be elevated on game day in Atlanta or something like that. But this just gives them a few more options, obviously, in the defensive backfield. However, I would say you're coming in less than 2 weeks from the season opener. I can't imagine Andre Chachere is going to be a big part of the plan, other than if he's active, maybe special teams against the Falcons.
Understood. And the only thing that surprised me about the move, and I don't know, maybe the Eagles found a diamond in the rough, and this kid ends up being a major contributor for him. He was on the scrap heap, so you do have to take that into consideration. And I read a couple stories about several Indianapolis players were a little surprised that he didn't make the team, that they thought guys on the roster thought that he was going to be amongst them. So they read into that what you're going to read into it. I thought if they were looking for someone to step up off the practice squad to add to the roster in the early going in the season, I thought it was going to be Craig James, because we talked so much about James and the fact that he didn't make the roster. You knew as soon as he didn't, they would try and get him back for the practice squad. They did. But I thought there was a chance he was going to rejoin the roster pretty quick. Do you think the reason that the new import from the Colts made it was more flexibility? We're back talking flexibility again. Do you think it was the fact that they look at him as both a corner and a safety at the same time, and they might not look at James that way? Do you think that's the reason why he gets the nod?
Not necessarily. I mean, understand, look, if you want to acquire this guy, you got to pick him up on waivers from that thought process, or you're risking losing him. Obviously, if he hits the street, he can sign with anybody. So if the Eagles wanted him, they had to claim him on waivers. If you claim him on waivers, you got to put him on the 53, at least to start. Then maybe they can get him into the building, and Jonathan Gannon can say, look, we want you here. We want to develop you. Right now, we need Craig James. Right now, we need Elijah Riley. We're going to elevate them. We're going to waive you, put you back on the practice squad, kind of finagle things that way. So, or they might really like him. They might think he's a better player. But it remains to be seen, other than obviously they have some history with this player and they claimed him for a reason.
And they do like him enough that they have already released Graylin Arnold from the practice squad. So that's one less overall, whether you're talking about the 70, as the Eagles like to talk about, the 70-man roster. It's not just 53, it's 70. Graylin Arnold has been removed from the 70 with the addition of Mr. Chachere. If we got that right, we're going to work on pronouncing his name over the next several weeks, if not months.
Well, we got it. I think we got it. We got the hypothetical spelling. So we got it close enough. Let's see how long he's around, Jody, before
we'll just learn how to spell.
Yeah.
We'll know how to spell his, pronounce his name, and then he'll be over and done with and on to another squad. All right. Another question I have for you is Hassan Ridgeway, also elevated and ready to go. Is this even going to stand, or is T.Y. McGill going to be back off the COVID before that first game against Atlanta? Is Hassan Ridgeway going to get an elevation of like a couple of days before they make another thought process deal on him? What do you think of the Ridgeway move?
Well, again, procedural. Hassan didn't get elevated. Hassan got re-signed. Hassan was released. He was one of those bested veteran guys. So the Eagles were doing that sort of juggling we talked about, and they brought him back. Now, they still have one open roster spot. In theory, it looks like, as you mentioned, T.Y. McGill is on the COVID list. So it looks like they're holding that spot for him. And all of a sudden, there we are with the depth. We all said, wow, that's not a lot of depth at defensive tackle with Marlon T and Milton Williams, because Milton Williams, as a rookie, has played the vast majority of his snaps outside. Actually, he's played more outside than inside. So you're looking at, there's no depth there. And all of a sudden, 24, 48 hours later, oh, it's going to be Hassan Ridgeway and T.Y. McGill. A perfect example of why there's such a vast overreaction to the initial 53. And we tell people, slow down. There's going to be manipulations. Guys are going to be back. It's going to be fine. And all of a sudden, Ridgeway's back. McGill's going to be back from the COVID list. And you have that depth that looks pretty good, actually, at defensive tackle. And you could probably, as I said, you can probably get Marlon through waivers if you need to and put him on the practice squad. So there's probably going to be more moves in the coming days, but we're pretty close to having the 53 set for Atlanta.
For the first game, because, yes, we are getting dangerously close to that as well. One other move that the Eagles made yesterday that did kind of surprise me was the signing of Nick Eubanks, a tight end from Michigan, to their practice squad. They've got 3 tight ends on the 53-man roster. Tyree Jackson as well, who we know is not ready to go. They put him on the IR, and it's not going to be 3 weeks of IR. It's going to be more like a half a season of IR, and it may turn out to be, because the Eagles medical team doesn't get it right every time. You and I were talking about Alshon Jeffries before the show. It was on the 53 all year long, even though they could have gotten to a half-year IR before Alshon was ever ready to be suited up and get back out there onto the field. So they've got 4 tight ends on the 70 right now. Do they really need a 5th? I'm not sure, unless they think that Eubanks is some great find. Just looking at it from a depth-wise position, that's a lot of tight ends for one. And then we're going to hear the Zach Ertz trade could still come down. It's not happening. Zach Ertz is here, folks. Those of you who want to see him elsewhere and think how he's going to get that second-round pick for him, it's not happening. Zach Ertz is going to be here. The question for me is, why is Mr. Eubanks here too?
16-man practice squad, Jody. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be if it were 10 like the old days, or even 12 like it was supposed to be elevated to before COVID turned it into 16. You got more room. So you see a guy you like, you pick him up, you put him on the practice squad for a couple of weeks. Yeah, the Eagles seem set at tight end with obviously Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Jack Stoll. And they love Tyree Jackson. But he's going to be out for 2 months. look, you got 16 guys. You got to fill them up with players, and that's one of the positives of having the extra practice squad spots. You can use those last couple spots to just look at players you think might have a chance, and if they don't, you can quickly rotate them out and bring other guys in.
And I don't want to downgrade the issue that COVID-19 is still in our country, because it is. It's still an issue. Back it up 1 year from today, and it was certainly a bigger issue in 2020 than it has been in 2021 for comparable days. But the NFL had to make its decision on how large the practice squad is going to be months ago, when we didn't know what kind of advancement we'd be making and how many people we'd have vaccinated and what kind of an effect it would have. Next year, we expected to be even in an even better position as medicine continues to get a little more finely tuned, and the vaccines, one of the three have been cleared by the FDA. The other two probably not far behind. How many do you think we're going to have on the practice squad next year? Did the NFL get used to this and like this? And everybody says if management doesn't have a problem with larger rosters, which means more money out of pocket, well, then I know the coaches and the general managers like it, because it just gives you that many more players to manage and that many more darts at the dartboard. What do you think the practice squad number? And I'm asking you to be a little bit of a scientist here, J Mac, which I'm not sure is more your wheelhouse than my wheelhouse. But how many do you think they have on the practice squad 2022?
Well, the CBA says 12, so ultimately I think it'll bounce back to 12. But I do think you're right. I mean, everybody seems to like it. The coaches like it. They love to liberalize. The personnel people love the liberalized IR rules. I mean, they're so much better than they were before. I think that has a better chance to stick than the 16-man practice squads. Now, from the union's perspective, that's 4 extra jobs per team. So, that's 128. Even I can do that math, Jody. That's 128 extra guys employed by the NFL. So they'll push, once you get something, nobody wants to give it up.
Exactly.
They'll push to keep it. Ultimately, it's 12 in the CBA, and I think they'll default to that. But yeah, the coaches love it. The personnel people love it. Do the owners love it? We're talking pennies, but rich people, they'd like to pinch pennies.
Oh, the NFL, every time it gets into a collective bargaining agreement with the players, it's always, we keep every single dollar we can. You need more days off? You got it. Less hitting in practice? You got it. They'll give them a bunch of things. None of them ever equate to more dollars in the players' pockets. The owners keep the dollars for themselves. That's the way the collective bargaining agreements have gone the last 2 or 3 times they've had to negotiate. And yes, because of things like COVID, every once in a while you have an outside the collective bargaining agreement negotiation. Yeah, the owners always seem to hang on to their money when it comes to that. But in this case, if the practice squad is as big as they've made it going forward, it would actually be a couple more dollars out of the owner's pockets. All right, speaking of going out of pocket, we're paying big bucks for our next guest. Or at least we're telling them that. We're telling them the check's in the mail, too. Whenever we get him on, he brings the goods. Zach Berman, who covers the Eagles for The Athletic, joins us next here on Birds.